A man is not finished when he is defeated. He is finished when he quits. The sun had barely risen over the rugged mountains, casting a faint orange glow on the dirt roads of a remote village. In the distance, the faint hum of a horse's hooves echoed through the mist, carrying with it a man who seemed as broken as the path beneath him. His clothes were tattered, his face drawn with exhaustion, but his eyes burned with something deeper, a fire that refused to be extinguished. You see, in this village there was a rule. They said a man was only defeated if his spirit broke. But what if that wasn't true? What if true defeat wasn't in the fall, but in the choice to stay down? One man had learned that lesson the hard way. His dreams were crushed, his world was falling apart, and yet, he never quit. But it wasn't the way you might think. As he walked into town that morning, people stared, half in pity, half in awe. They all assumed he'd give up like everyone else did, but there was something different about him, something that set him apart from the rest. The question isn't whether he was defeated, because we all face defeat at some point. The real question is, what happens when you decide that defeat is not the end? Would you have the courage to keep going, even when the world tells you you're finished? The answer might surprise you. The village was ancient, nestled in the valley between two towering mountains, where the winds whispered secrets passed down through generations. Its people, hardened by years of harsh winters and scarce crops, had learned long ago the meaning of resilience. They had a rhythm to their lives, quiet, unyielding, and full of hard work. Life was slow here, and they prided themselves on their endurance. But there was something else about this village, something that made its heart beat differently. It was the stories of men who had fallen, men who had risen again, and those who had given in. Every generation passed on a tale, a warning, and a lesson. The men of this village were taught that being defeated was not the end, but quitting. Quitting was the one thing they could never afford. And so when Jiro returned to the village covered in dust and sweat, after years of trying to carve a future outside, he wasn't the hero they expected. No, Jiro was the embodiment of failure in their eyes. His journey, filled with promises and broken dreams, had failed him every turn. Yet, he hadn't stayed down. He had kept pushing. And now, here he was, returning not as a conquering hero, but as a man who had seen the depths of his own limitations. The elders had warned the younger men of the village, telling them to look up to those who never gave up. But they had forgotten that the true test of a man was not whether he fell, but whether he had the strength to keep walking when everything else told him to stop. And Jiro was walking. He had made a name for himself in the outside world, or at least that's what he thought. He'd traveled to places where the air was thick with ambition, where men fought not just for survival, but for recognition. But each battle he fought left him scarred. Not in the way one might expect, though. His scars weren't from physical battles, but from the ones he'd fought in his mind. It was there, in the solitude of his thoughts, that the real war had raged. The war between what he wanted to be and what the world told him he was. In the years away, Jiro had experienced moments where the weight of his failures seemed too much to bear, but he had kept going. He wasn't just walking because he had to. He was walking because he had no choice. As he made his way through the village, memories flooded him. He could hear the voices of his past echoing in the corners of his mind, each one telling him to stop. "You've failed enough," they would say. "There's no more room for you in this world." And yet there was something else, buried deeper within, something that refused to let him quit. The world might have seen him as defeated, but Jiro knew that true defeat came the moment he decided to stop. The villagers gathered around as he entered the square, their faces a mixture of curiosity and judgment. He could see it in their eyes, the whispers that spread like wildfire, the disbelief that someone could return after so many failures. And yet, Jiro knew he would not be swayed. The weight of their expectations, the judgment of 1,000 past failures, none of it mattered. There was only one question that remained. Would he quit? The first few days in the village were filled with silence. People looked at him differently now. He was no longer the bright-eyed dreamer who had left years ago. Now he was the broken man who had returned empty-handed, the man who had witnessed the darkest parts of his soul. And yet he did not quit. He walked, and with every step he healed. Slowly but surely, Jiro began to find his rhythm again. He didn't find it in the applause or the expectations of the villagers. He found it in the quiet moments of solitude, the mornings when the fog was thick and the world felt still. In those moments, he remembered what he had learned, the lesson that defeat was just a moment. The only thing that truly mattered was whether you decided to rise after. As the days passed, something began to shift. The villagers, those who once pitied him, began to watch him with different eyes. It wasn't his strength that captivated them, it was his persistence. He kept going. Despite the odds, despite the whispers, he refused to quit. There's something about the human spirit, isn't there? Something that can't be put into words. It's an invisible force that pushes us forward, even when we've been broken and scattered. It's the fire that burns within us, even when we think all is lost. And Jiro had that fire. It wasn't about the victories or the praise or the material rewards. It was about the simple truth. He kept going. And in that, he became something more. Something the village needed to see. The days turned into weeks, and Jiro found himself in the heart of the village once more, where the elders gathered at dawn. Their faces were stern, yet there was something different now. The wisdom in their eyes seemed to carry a deeper understanding. Jiro approached them, not as the man who had failed, but as the one who had chosen not to quit. "Jiro," one of the elders spoke, his voice steady yet soft. "You've returned to us as a man who understands what we always said. A man is not finished when he is defeated. He is finished when he quits. And you have not quit." The village had been waiting for this moment. They had been waiting to see if Jiro would rise, not to reclaim his glory, but to reclaim his life. As the sun set behind the mountains that evening, casting a fiery red glow over the village, the truth was clear. Defeat was a moment, a fleeting thing that passed. But the choice to quit, that lingered. What does it mean to rise even after everything has fallen apart? What does it mean to choose to move forward when the world tells you there's nothing left? For Jiro, the answer wasn't in the battle. It wasn't in the fight or the fall. It was in the choice to keep going, despite it all. And so the village learned that sometimes the hardest victory isn't in the moment of triumph. It's in the quiet persistence, the refusal to stop, the strength to endure. If you made it this far, comment with the word fire, because that's what Jiro had. And trust me, this story is just the beginning. There's so much more to come. Like, share, and don't forget to subscribe to stay with us on this journey. The next chapter will leave you speechless.